Hey there, Det 630. Good morning, Major Cummins. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. Happy to be here.
Good, good. We're happy for you to be here. Thanks for coming on by, sir. But we're really excited for this podcast. But Major Cummins has something to say real quick before we get this thing kicked off.
All right. Yep. So it's just a disclaimer for myself. The views expressed are my own and do not constitute endorsement by the Department of Defense, Department of the Air Force, or the U.S. government. My participation and appearance in any private or public event, sponsored or otherwise, or references are just my own. That's it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, sir. But we're super excited to have you on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome. So it's gonna be our fourth or this is gonna be our sixth episode. So uh, but we'll get right into it. So I think the viewers probably would want to know is uh, your uh, your AFSC and how you ended up getting to that AFSC, and then maybe kind of just starting from the start. How was your ROTC experience?
Yeah, so absolutely. So when I was in ROTC, I can tell you personnel for support was not something that was on my dream sheet as the
Mm.
top. I looked at it as nothing actually within my scope of ever wanting to do it. I actually joined ROTC through the SOAR Scholarship Program when I was an enlisted airman, and so when I did that, I did it to fly, and that's all I wanted to do. Even though I get motion sick, horrible, horrible decision to try and be like, hey, you know what? I'll just beat it. I can beat it, and you can beat it. It's absolutely true. But I have pretty bad motion sickness, and it's not something I wanted to wake up every day and have to deal with doing my job. And so I decided early on I'm going to change my path and try and do something else. And so I transitioned and wanted to really become a cyber officer. But what ended up happening was of the Air Force design, just like everything. So they positioned me to be a force support officer my senior year, just like you guys get. And I mean, the rest is really history. It's been one of those jobs that I never thought about doing or never thought I would actually enjoy doing, but it has become something I am extremely passionate about, and I can tell you my AS 100s know that.
Yes, sir.
Um, I do enjoy the customer service aspect of it. I do enjoy the taking care of people. It is something that fills my cup, if you will. It makes me happy. It gives me joy in being able to help others when I'm active duty or even while I'm here. So, my time in ROTC was a little bit different than what you guys go through here. Commissioning out of the University of Michigan, it was much better than here.
Oh,
Uh, but I can tell
Kent
you,
State's the best, sir.
your experience here is better than what I got there. Where we had a pretty distinct line between POC and GMC. You guys have blurred that line, and I think that's a great thing. You understand that you are all joining the Air Force. You're all going to be officers. You'll all be peers. When you're 1 year apart here, that doesn't change throughout your career. That 1 year change when you get on active duty is something that you're going to have for the rest of your career. But you know, you may make rank at the same time later on in your career. Or you may only be a month or two apart, and when you make rank, and so it's great that you guys have kind of blurred that line and really take on that mentorship role with the GMC a lot more than what we did when you participate in marching with them and leading from the front. That's something that we didn't do. We had a POC lead lab different than what you guys have. Our POC lead lab was at the same time as the cadets lead lab, the GMC's lead lab, and the only people who interacted with the GMC on a daily basis were the training staff. And so it was very, very different than what we had back then. And I'm really excited that it is because you guys get more out of it directly leading immediately. Um, and you have an opportunity to step up every lead lab, and guide the GMC to be better each and every day. So, very happy that it has changed. Very happy that it's not just screaming and yelling. I've never been a proponent of that kind of training all the time. There's a time and a place for it, but that is
Mhm.
not typically while you're in ROTC. That might be while you are down at field training. But that environment does not typically breed the officers that we need to lead on a daily basis. It breeds, more wartime officers which is not what we need right now. We need people
Hmm.
who are innovative and looking to excel and looking for new ways to solve the problems that we have in the Air Force. We're always going to have money problems. We're always going to have people problems. We need people that come in with, solutions that are, new and uh, things that folks like me haven't thought of.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And I know we've talked about it a couple podcasts here. I've even mentioned my experience starting out here, 2021, fall 2021, that there was a distinct line between POC and GMC, and over the years, that's definitely blurred, and it's been great to see how much more interaction, how much more growth we've
Yeah.
seen, just even directly in Lead Lab, being able to interact with the GMC. With the marching, everybody's just picking up everything so much quicker. And I think people feel a lot more comfortable here in the debt. Like you said, just a great thing overall. So it's been going pretty good with that. So, sir, what brought you to Kent State, and what inspired you to become a ROTC instructor?
Yeah, so back after I had commissioned, my first job was being a gold bar recruiter. At the time, they hadn't really defined what that was beyond
Hmm.
just being a diversity recruiter. Our goal was to go out and get high school scholarship applicants, and that was it. Um, I didn't really have a boss locally, and doing the job in North Texas was something that was a little bit foreign to me, being
Hmm.
in the Dallas area. I can tell you it was not something that I expected, nor was it something I truly enjoyed. The recruiting game is something that you kind of got to keep your head up and be positive all the time while you're engaging with, people who sometimes have no interest in joining and they're just at a career fair and they want the free swag on the table.
Hmm.
It was a little bit frustrating at times that I would go to a place and I might only ever get one person out of 1,000 people to be interested. But while I was there, I was stationed at the Detachment 835 at North Texas, and I had a fantastic time engaging with their cadets. The cadre there let me participate in teaching some of the classes. They let me lead some PT sessions. They were really incredibly welcoming to me as a brand new second lieutenant. And that's where I kind of found my joy of helping people and as well as coaching and mentoring. And so I took that and it kind of stayed with me over time. It's something I've always been extremely passionate about. And so as soon as I had the opportunity to come back to ROTC, this is always something that I wanted to do. I was told this was a career killer early in my career, that if you go and teach ROTC, that's the end of it.
Hmm.
You'll do no more. You might make one more rank, but it's not going to lead you into any leadership roles, which was frustrating. It was very, very frustrating to hear that because when you have a direct impact on the next generation of officers, um, that's very, very important. And I don't understand, I couldn't understand at the time how the Air Force didn't think that was important.
Hmm.
Because, you're training the next generation, you're ensuring that, the legacy of the Air Force goes on. And they just didn't see it that way. They saw it as, ROTC jobs were sometimes hard to fill. Nobody wanted to volunteer for them because it had that. And so the people that you would get in them were typically, of lower quality, and that's not always the case. Sometimes you had great officers, and I had some really great officers at the University of Michigan. But then there was, I saw other officers that had no desire to be there, and that they were voluntold to be there. And
Yeah.
so, a few years ago, the Air Force changed that mentality, and the secretary came out with a memo that said, we're going to create the OIRSD, which is the Officer Instructor and Recruiting Special Duty board. So when it became a boarded process, it became a selective process. And so now all of a sudden it was no longer, a career killer. Now it was being looked at as a great opportunity because with the board came a directive from the Secretary of the Air Force that this OIRSD board should be looked at positively, and any recruiting or special duty experience like ROTC should be looked at positively when it comes to
Hmm.
promotion boards. And so that was a fantastic turn that they made quite a few years ago now. I think it was 2018 that they shifted to that, and it has become more and more competitive as time has gone on. Um, so when I had the opportunity leaving San Antonio, uh, I this is something that I wanted to do. I didn't want to wait anymore. I wanted to come back into the ROTC fold. I talked to a mentor. My goal was always to return to ROTC at the end of my career. Maybe when I was in like Colonel Over's position and leading an ROTC unit in that way as the deck commander. But after talking to a mentor, I found that you really need the experience of being a uh, regular ROTC cadre before you take command, that it gives you a kind of a leg up if you do a really good job while you're in it, that it gives you an opportunity to come back and do it at the end of your career, more so than just trying to see it out
Hmm.
like it had been before. And so now, when that happened after I had that conversation, I applied. The board itself is a very, selective process. So the first year that I applied, it's something that your senior rater has to um, they have to actually go in and click a button is all to nominate you. So I had some endorsements from some 06s that I worked with at ATC, and the senior rater was on their way to retirement and didn't click the button. The
Oh man.
front office had got a little bit lazy and it was very frustrating. So they nominated no one from ATC and my organization in ATC that year, and because of that, there was nothing I could do. It was just um, kind of holding my hands up in the air, being like, my leadership let me down. But it really wasn't my leadership that let me down. In solely it was partly me. I didn't
Hmm.
drive to ensure that that actually, got signed off. I wasn't pushing my leaders to say, "Hey, I need to make sure this goes through." I did what I thought I needed to do, and then I just ended my actions there. And so, what I should have done, and it was a great lesson for me, was nobody cares about your career, right? Like you do. And
Hmm.
so, be that annoying bee, be that wasp that
Yes,
won't
sir.
leave you alone at a fair, right? When you're eating all the good food, just always look out for yourself. Look out for your troops the way that you want to be looked out for yourself. And so the next year, I was luckily given a great opportunity to stay at Randolph. And so I spent another year there, which is weird because it ended up being a 5-year tour there, but I knew by staying there, I was going to be given another opportunity to come back to ROTC. And so, as soon as I had the opportunity to apply again, when I got into my new job at AFPC, I jumped in and I said, you know what, like, this is something that I really want to do. Talk to my boss about it, ensured that I got that nomination from my senior rater.
Hmm.
And it was just me ending up at Det 630 was just something after talking to Colonel Crossman and hearing his philosophy, hearing what you guys are doing here at Det 630. My family lives just up the road in Walton
Awesome.
Hills. And so, having family close by this is a first for us. The closest we've had family before this was 5 hours. So, for both, my wife and my kids, like having a grandparent, close by is an awesome thing. And so we wanted to take that opportunity, and Det 630 worked out great for us. So extremely, extremely excited to be here. This is something I'm extremely passionate about. Again, I've talked to a lot of people about it, being here, but this is something that I've always wanted to do. And, I'm extremely passionate. I want to share that passion with you guys, passion for leadership, passion for growth. Uh, and hopefully you guys get that, for my 3 years that I'm here.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we learned that in class too about being a shepherd of your own career. So nobody cares more about your career than yourself. So
Yeah, exactly.
going through that, going through that, and it takes a little bit of grit, but in the end, you get opportunities like this, and you get a, like you said, like be passionate and help cadets out while you're here, and that has that kind of impact. But it kind of starts with you. So
Yep.
um, I think that's a good tidbit to take away from this for sure. But I kind of want to start transitioning into the you've seen some pretty unique locations throughout your career.
Yeah.
So kind of talk us through that, kind of all your duty stations, maybe deployments, what you enjoyed about each one of them, or what you maybe disliked about them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right out of school, right out of tech school when I was enlisted. My first assignment was originally going to be Aviano, and then halfway through my 11-month tech school, they told me, "Never mind, you're going to Launchstuhl, Germany," which was one, where is Launchstuhl? How do you say Launchstuhl? Uh, and uh, and then why Germany and not Italy? And
Hmm.
so at first I was a little bit frustrated. I was like, I was very excited to go to Aviano. I thought it was a cool opportunity. I wasn't super passionate about, Italian food versus German food. I like German food a lot better now, but yeah, it was just one of those shocks. And so as soon as I got to Germany, it was a little bit of a shock to the system. The language barrier was pretty heavy. Lived in the dorms on Ramstein for a year, and was very excited to get out of there and live on the local economy. It's something that if you ever get stationed overseas, get out of the base and go explore. That's something I learned while I was there. You have when you're at Ramstein, I mean, you're maybe an hour or two away from Belgium or Liechtenstein, not Liechtenstein, but there's another small little country. Gosh, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's right near France. I mean, we were an hour away from France too. I mean, you're
Hmm.
4 hours away from Paris. You're, a couple hours away from the Alps. Like, take an opportunity to go and explore. And there's a lot of people that just kind of hang out on base and, hang out around the base and don't really take the opportunity
Yeah.
of being in another country. And so, that plus I loved soccer. I've always loved soccer, and so getting stationed in Europe where you can play soccer and, adult leagues are not only a thing, but they're extremely competitive. There's paid leagues, there's leagues all the way up to the professional levels. And so just getting involved in that and being able to play, soccer there was awesome. And then, once I got done with my ROTC tour or my Gold Bar recruiting tour, my dream had always been to go to England. As a
Hmm.
kid, I always wanted to go to England. I always wanted to play soccer in England. I always wanted to visit London. I always wanted to go to my team's stadium, which is Chelsea Football Club in London. It was something I never thought I would get the opportunity to do, but uh, I was extremely fortunate to get stationed at Mildenhall, um, which was just a dream come true. I mean,
Awesome.
when I got there, I was, you're not shocked by a complete language barrier. You're able to communicate. Driving on the wrong side of the road because that's what it is. On the wrong side of the car, on the wrong side of the
Had to
road.
switch your brain around a little
Yeah,
bit on that one.
culture shock, right? Like
That's
it was,
crazy.
when you're on the right side of the car, like, when you're driving a car, your natural instinction is to look up and to the right to look in your rear view mirror, right? Your blind spot is back into the right more than it is back into the left. People are now passing you on the opposite side of the road that you would think they are. You're not looking up right and seeing anything other than the pillar of the car. So you're shifting with your left hand and not your right
Oh
hand,
man.
when you're driving a manual. So it was definitely different, and it's funny because when you get there, the first day I got to England, I had already bought a car before I got there, and it was at a friend's house, and so I just went and picked it up, and I mean I was driving. I'd never driven in England, and they're just like, "Here's your keys, drive it back
You
to
had to get a new
base."
license out there or anything?
Not for the first 30 days. It was
Wow.
yeah, I feel bad for the English because there's a lot of Americans that go and get accidents, and they cause, luckily most of them aren't fatal. Most of them are just, fender benders or Americans driving into ditches because
Mhm.
there are ditches everywhere and the roads are really narrow. But yeah, it was weird, turning
I can
out onto
imagine.
the wrong side of the road. But again, while I was there, got to play a ton of soccer. Got to explore all of England. Got to go, into Europe again. Got to go to Scotland, which is my favorite place on earth. It's so beautiful. If you ever have the opportunity to go hiking, if that's something you enjoy, Scotland has just a bunch of wonderful trails and a lot of opportunity that it's not, super steep mountains that you're having to climb up. Like there's nice, rolling trails, uh, kind of what you would see in like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. It's
And
awesome.
so I likened it to that, and we spent a couple weeks up in Scotland on multiple occasions. So yeah, taking advantage of that, and even going back, our last Christmas we spent in Germany, at Garmisch-Partenkirchen. We have a military kind of resort there called Edelweiss. And so we just hopped on a plane, went to Munich, and rented a car, drove down, and stayed at the base. Not a base, but they check your ID. It's everything's American there. They speak English, and you have a great view of the Alps outside of your hotel room, and
Wow, that sounds awesome.
you can go snowboarding and skiing and do all that fun stuff, and go up to the tallest peak in Germany, and it's fantastic. It was a really really awesome opportunity for me and my family. So uh, you know moral of the story is, when you get opportunities to get stationed in foreign countries, go and explore them. Go and enjoy the culture of them. Try different foods. Who would ever think like French fries and mayonnaise would work together? But the Germans are passionate about it, and they're passionate
Wow, I
about it
might
for a
have to give
reason.
that a try.
It's
It
interesting, but
is interesting.
they're pretty good. But yeah, I think schnitzel is one of my favorite foods now. I love schnitzel, but it's not something we can easily get while we're
Oh
here.
no, just at the German Fest. I think that's the only thing that
Yeah, I
has
mean,
schnitzel
I
here, and
luckily actually
sure
at
the Germans
Costco
out in Germany do it better, or
they do.
Costco.
Yeah,
Oh,
Costco had a box of them, and my wife whipped it up the other night, and wow,
it's pretty convincing.
it was good. It wasn't as
Brings you
convincing
back to
as
Germany.
German food, but it was I mean, it was as close as I think we've come here in the States to getting good schnitzel. So yeah, I mean, I've been really really fortunate to have the assignments I've had, but I can tell you the opportunities are bountiful for the people that do want to travel and do want to get overseas. You just got to put it on your dream sheet. You got to, whenever it comes to getting an assignment, you have to be your own advocate.
Hmm.
The officer assignment process isn't something that is like the enlisted assignment process. When you're an officer going into an officer assignment, you are hired from the commander standpoint. So there's something called a billet owner, and that's typically a commander. So the billet owner is going to bid on you, and they're not going to bid on you if you don't make a phone call and do a phone interview
Yeah,
with them. And that's what, even getting here, I had to have a phone call with Colonel Crossman, and in some way, show the passion that I have for this job. And so, you're going to do that. And you're also, finding like, does this job fit for me beyond just my desire to go to Europe or Japan or Korea? Like, am I going to get along well with this leader? Am I going to fit well with their leadership style? And am I going to be able to adapt their leadership style into my own? And sometimes the answer is going to be no, and you have to be okay with being like, right now is not the time for me to go to that place. Maybe the next time. And so that's something that a lot of people don't do. An interview is a two-way process. It's not just a one-way process. It's something that you need to take seriously, because that's the next step in your career. And if you just are like, I'm going to Europe regardless of what happens, regardless of who I'm going to work for, or what their leadership style is like, or what's going on in the world,
hmm,
you may not enjoy it in the way that you could if you were going there at the right time in your career.
that makes sense. I mean, I've heard it during career day. We were on Zoom with one of the pilots, and he was saying that the Air Force does a really good job at putting you at one really great duty station, and then they'll throw you at another one that maybe isn't quite as something that you want. Is that kind of how that works, or is it if you work hard enough to get to where you want to get to, it kind of like you said, you got to do those interview processes. And does that work the same way for rated guys, or is that just work for, or is that just the non-rated process?
No, I mean, the process works the same, across the entire officer career fields, all entire and the officer enterprise really. So you have assignment officers that work at AFPC, and there could be a group of them, or there could be a single individual. That assignment officer is going to be the one that tags you to go to a specific location. So when you create your dream sheet, when the billet owner creates their bids, uh, it's the assignment officer's job to kind of manage all of these things. And so you have EFMP, which is exceptional family members. So they have to consider anything like that. They have joint spouse assignments. They have, say you are married to an army officer, like how do we get you to a location that works for
Mm,
them and doesn't keep you separated? The Air Force is big on keeping families together, and so they have to go through each and every one of these processes and make sure that they're matching the people appropriately. So the assignment process can take a long time, but I'd say, you know, you're going to be given great opportunities to go to a whole bunch of places, like, and it's not always going to be like,
mm.
oh, I got to go to England, like, oh crap, I've got to go to San Antonio. Like
Yeah,
a lot of people say, San Antonio is a great location, and if you don't mind heat, because it's hot all the time. There's maybe 2 months that it's not, but it is pretty toasty all the time. And if you're okay with that, if you're okay with dealing with the heat and you like the heat, I can tell you San Antonio has amazing food. It's got amazing travel opportunities when you're there. I
mm,
mean, you've got, a huge national park on the northwest side of Texas in Big Bend. Um, I mean, there's awesome opportunities to just kind of travel all over and get great food. I mean, Austin, is only an hour away from Randolph. And so, if you like that music scene, if you like Formula One, you've got a track there. If you've got, if you like just, again, really good barbecue, you've got
yeah,
that there. And so, you know, every location has those opportunities to it. And I'd say, like, there are very few that I would say I don't want to go to, but that's just because I don't like the ultra cold. Like, why
yeah.
not? Like,
Hate the
but
cold too.
yeah, it's something that I've never dreamed about. Hey, I want to go to North Dakota. But I can tell you, there are people that do. My brother's one of them. He just graduated basic training last week, and his number one choice in the U.S. is Minot.
Really, of
Um,
all of them,
of all of them, whatever
Alaska
he
number
makes.
two.
Alaska is his number one
Wow.
for his OCONUS assignments. So yeah, Alaska and Hawaii are both considered OCONUS because they're separated from the contiguous United States, but that's where he wants to go. He wants to go somewhere cold, and then the next one after that was Misawa, which is in northern Japan, and it's very cold there, just like it is in Minot. So it's people want to go to all these locations, and it's not just one person having a bad experience. One person having a bad experience could totally ruin that for a whole bunch of
Mm,
other people because you go in there with a negative attitude. But if you go into it with a positive attitude and really try and explore the local area and get with it, you're only going to be there for 2 to 4 years, and so make the most of it. And if you're not at a great location, find other ways to burn your time, like get a graduate degree, or learn a new skill, learn a new hobby. I mean, you have those opportunities wherever you go. I couldn't do woodworking in England,
sick.
and I wouldn't want to do woodworking in England because I wanted to travel and I wanted to play soccer. But when I was in San Antonio and it was hot all the time, I really enjoyed the fact that I could woodwork. I enjoyed the fact that I could get wood for cheap because, San Antonio is the sixth or seventh largest city in the nation, I think.
Yeah.
And so, like you have a lot of that, um, infrastructure there that you're able to get. So I don't think it's particularly, a good assignment, bad assignment. I think it's what you make it. Each and every assignment's going to be what you make it. And if you go into it just like any job, if you go into it with a negative attitude, it's going to be less great than it could have been.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, sir. So I kind of want to start moving in. I got a question for you about your leadership philosophy and kind of your take on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a tough one. Leadership philosophy, it's different for everybody, right? For me, I like leading from the front. I like, being that servant leader for people. I like taking care of people. And so, sometimes that means getting away from the desk, getting away from, your emails. It's something that you can easily get caught up in. As you make rank, you're going to have more and more emails coming in. You're going to have more and more responsibility, but you've always got to make an opportunity to get up and away from your desk to engage with your airmen. Uh, just like you guys here at the detachment, like I remember being a cadet and I remember being an AS 100. And when one of my cadre members would take time to get to know me, or they would sit down and talk to me, more casually, that was big for me. And
Hmm.
so I want to do that, with you guys while I'm here. I want you to see me as, someone you can come and talk to. Your airmen need to see you in that way as well. And you need to be, completely open to them, like be transparent with them. So that's a big part of my leadership style is transparency. I do not believe that, we should hide things that we don't need to hide or, cover things that we don't need to cover. If we can be transparent with you on a process, we should be, because when you're transparent with somebody on a process, that means that you trust that process and you don't believe there are flaws in that process. But it's also, giving you the opportunity to have other people say, hey, your process is a little bit flawed. Here's maybe how you could improve it. And we have a lot of leaders that don't like hearing that they're not doing a fantastic job, right?
Hmm.
Um, no one likes, for their own ego, no one likes to be told, hey, you're not doing a great job in X, Y, or Z. But that's how you grow as a leader. It's not, by continuing to do the things that you're great at. It's by being uncomfortable and learning to do the things that you're not great at. And if that's, going out and talking to people, if you're great at crushing emails, that's
There
awesome.
you go.
But, your airman might not know what your face looks like. And if your airmen don't know what your face looks like, how can they be, believe that you have their best interest at heart? Um, so, if you can, my philosophy is being transparent as much as possible. And when you do that, your airmen will trust you more. They'll, want to engage with you more. They'll want to bring things to you more because they know that you have their best interest at heart. And it's worked really well for me so far. Um, we talk about this in some master's classes that I'm in, and uh, there's a lot of people that don't really believe in transparency in the same way that I do, but um, some of the best organizations run on transparency, and I think we could do that in the Air Force. We don't need to hide that we have money problems. We don't need to hide that we have personnel problems. Um, there's no reason for it. If we're
Hmm.
gonna have to work long hours, just be upfront and say, hey, like this might suck for the next couple weeks, but I'm gonna be here with you, and we're gonna go through it together. And like you as a leader have to recognize when that burnout is about to happen, and then be able to step up to your leader and tell them, hey, this is gonna happen. We need to check ourselves and make sure that we're not going to run our airmen into the ground. Um, and you have to be that person to do that when you're a leader. So uh yeah, that's, I mean, I can't really go into it much more than that, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff there for
Yeah.
sure. And then so with all these leadership lessons, what's your take on instilling these into the next generation or the AS 100s that you're teaching?
Yes.
How do you do that? What's your technique?
Uh, so I love my S100 class. I love teaching it. I love, the participation that we get in the class. I feel like they started really in the last couple weeks to open up. But sharing stories and sharing experiences, I think, is one of the best ways to learn.
Hmm.
And people being open to learning from other people's experiences, I think, is one of the best opportunities you have while in ROTC. Utilization of your prior enlisted folks that you have here, you know, don't let them just sit on the side. Don't let them just skate by on their experience. Like call them out, utilize their stories. Uh, and that's what I try and do in my AS 100 class is like link it to things that are real,
Hmm.
link it to any kind of mission that I've done in the past, a story that I have that links each specific thing. You're not going to be able to do that in every lesson. And sometimes it's a little bit frustrating. When I look at the AS 102 uh, course, so the second semester of AS 100, I can tell you it's different than what it had ever been in the past. And we have some AS 300 lessons thrown in now to the AS 100 curriculum.
Oh wow.
And so, we're starting you off earlier to be better leaders, but um, when people see it in action, they can either mimic it or they can take what they want from it and then become the leader that they want to become. Um, because no one's going to be exactly you and no one's going to be exactly how you want them to be. Every individual is an individual. And the sooner that you understand that and respect that, and that everyone's going to come with their own strengths and weaknesses, uh, the better you're going to be as a leader. And so my goal is to instill that mentality that you can be competitive without putting other people down. That you
Hmm.
can, strive to be the best without just stepping on people that came before you. And we have a big culture of that in the Air Force, a big issue with that, where um, when you come into a job as a second lieutenant, you want to do better than the person that was that was there before you, because that makes you stand out, right? That makes you stand out as to your bosses when they say, "Whoa, you're doing a better job and I can tell, and you are making less work for me because you're doing such an amazing job here." Uh, Instead, we need to start recognizing the fact that the person that was there before you may have been leading in a different way, and that way was successful for them, and it
Mm-hmm.
maybe just didn't link up with the boss's style of leadership, right? And so when you do that, and when you change that mentality and say, hey, that person was doing great in, like, find what they were doing great in and try and learn from that experience that they have, but then instill your own strength. And so one of the greatest things I think I got from playing on the Air Force soccer team was the quote, "Leave it better." And
Yeah.
so our team mentality was leave it better, and find something that you can improve and leave it better. And so you may not go into a job that has a lot of flaws. You may inherit a job that was running extremely smoothly, but you have to find your way to put your stamp on it. And when you put your stamp on something, that gives you an opportunity to still be competitive without putting the person that came before you down. Acknowledge that we have great leaders in the Air Force, and that you may be following a great leader and that succeeded in what they did, but it's really your opportunity to step in and recognize, they may not be flawed, but they had some weaknesses. Everybody does. And find a way to utilize that and grow and leave that program better than when you found it. And so I've had that mentality for the last few years. It's not something I had when I was a second lieutenant. When I was a second lieutenant, I was that competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I came into a job, it was putting somebody down, being like, "What? They didn't do this? Like, this is part of their job. Like, how did they not do this?" Or, like, "Oh, you never saw, Airman Snuffy? Like, yeah, like that figures. Like, Airman Snuffy, like, he just sat in his office." Or they were all always at the BX. They took 3 hour lunches, and, they really abused their authority. Like, why be that way? We have the culture in the Air Force of being that way because it's competitive, because promotion's competitive. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can be competitive in other ways, and I have great stratifications at this point in my career without being that way, and by just doing the job that I'm given and doing as good of a job as I can do and utilizing the strengths that I have to grow it and leave it better. So that's what my challenge would be to my 100s and to all of the cadets here is, when you leave this program, like, leave your stamp on it. And every time that you approach a PT session or a lesson, like, go into it, with an open mind, and go into it trying to find a way to improve what you have today, so that way the next generation can be better.
Awesome stuff, sir. I think that's all we got. I think we really nailed it on the head today. So, any other last final remarks,
No, I really
Major
appreciate
Cummins?
the
Awesome.
opportunity. Thank you so much. I'm excited to see where you guys take this.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time, sir.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.